I'm talking to Austin Jenkins, who's a naturalist over at USC Sumter. Austin, there's something really exciting getting ready to happen.
Absolutely. So from about mid-April through mid-May of this year, 2024, we'll have the emergence of one of the periodical cicada broods. It's known as the Great Southern Brood, I think, and it comes across the Carolinas and goes all the way over to Illinois and toward Kansas. But we'll have them here, especially in our Piedmont region, just above the Midlands into the Piedmont of South Carolina.
But we see cicadas every year. They're the ones that leave those funky little shells on the outsides of the tree.
Yes. And so those are the annual cicadas, or sometimes called the dog day cicadas. And they have, because they come out in the dog days of summer when it's getting kind of hot and long, and we'll see them, especially people notice their exoskeletons on the bases of trees. But then you hear the noise up in the trees later on in the day, and those are the cicada males especially singing. So they look like this individual that's here, kind of deep green in color. We have several different species of them. The best way to tell the difference is really by listening to the songs, which I encourage people to do. Every different song that you hear is a different species of cicada, and you'll have several in your own backyard. These have about a 3-year life cycle typically, but they alternate each year. So we have them present every year.
Okay.
So
they don't do everything in 1 year, but there's so many. There are a couple
overlaps.
of them, so every year one of them's going to come out.
That's right.
Okay,
That's right.
fun. And so I remember the first time I saw an adult, I was 30-something years old, because I was out in the garden and I said, what in the world is that huge, big-eyed bug?
Yeah, they still tucked away up in the trees, and the males are singing, the females are hopefully interested in their songs, and then they lay eggs up in the trees too. The eggs hatch out, and the larval cicadas just kind of free fall down onto the forest floor or the ground of your yard, and then they burrow into the ground, find a tree root, and then start to suck on the xylem, on the interior part of that tree root for the next few years. So there's, unless you're looking up in the trees or you see one dead on the ground, it's not often that you run across them.
And the xylem is the part of the tree's vascular system that's taking water up and not full of carbohydrates like the phloem, which is sending things down, the photosynthate compounds.
Right.
Correct? And so is that one reason that perhaps these take a long time, these periodic stay under the ground drinking xylem fluid for that long?
Yeah, so even the ones we see each year that are 2- and 3-year cicadas, that's kind of a long time for an insect to live, and so that is one of the hypotheses that since they're not, you're not feeding upon a nutrient-rich source, well, you just need to take a little bit longer to do what you do, and so 2 or 3 years in a lot of our annual cicadas, and then 13 or even 17 years in the ones that are going to emerge this spring. So.
And the mysteries of nature, you say they even have some gut bacteria. We don't know exactly how that works, that helps them get some other nutrients?
Right. So first of all, if they're on a nutrient-poor source, you can just take longer to get what you need, but also you can partner up with, they call them endosymbionts, little bacteria that live in the digestive tract. We're doing this too, as humans. But the cicadas use some of these bacteria that help them to assemble amino acids in ways that would not be possible otherwise. And so that's great for the cicada, but it's also great for the natural world because you're getting calories that are being produced out of something that wasn't available without that partnership.
And some people worry that they're they're drinking all the water out of my poor tree roots. Well, first of all, I think when they go down, they aerate the soil.
Yeah.
And then if this relationship's going on, I imagine there's some exudates coming out.
Yes, absolutely. And then when they ultimately perish, so there's exudates, and there's when they perish, they fertilize the soil. They're a tremendous, boom to the ecosystem economy, so to speak. They really are. And a lot of birds, for example, other animals that eat the cicadas do really well in the years that the cicadas emerge.
There's so much food.
Increased production, and that'll sometimes last, depending on the species, for several years after the emergence of some of the periodical cicadas, especially. So.
Now the female adult has, I guess they mate, And then she has an ovipositor?
She does, yeah. And so when that egg is laid, often in the distal margins of a lot of the trees, and a lot of times it's deciduous trees for the periodical cicadas, the hardwoods especially.
Now the distal margin is kind of towards the end of the...
Toward the end, yeah. And so if you drive through the Piedmont of South Carolina, for example, anywhere where this brood hatches in 2024, and look at the tops of the trees, you know, in the mid to late summer, you're going to see a lot of dead branches.
Oh.
And that's because the ovipositor of the female cicada went in there and you know, did a little bit of damage. But it's not been shown to be enough to have anybody worry.
And she lays, and then she just moves down a little bit. She will lay a fair number of eggs in one little twig. Is that correct?
That's
okay.
Right. And, you know, you know, they've even found that sometimes they pick sunny spots, you know, because those are the places where perhaps there's going to be a more beneficial, you know, life cycle to the cicadas. But it's those distal outside small twigs that results in some natural pruning.
Yeah.
And good gardeners know that that's important. So.
Selective pruning can
Yes.
be important. So we have the adult that's going to be coming out in our area, actually not where I live, but in the Piedmont of South Carolina, is different looking in some ways.
Yeah, and so this year is the hatch of the periodical cicadas.
It's 2024.
2024, and these individuals have been underneath the ground for 12 years. This is the 13th year. They're teenagers, so they want to be wild and crazy. They're going to come out and party, and they're going to do that in numbers that are unimaginable. 1.5 million cicadas on 1 acre of land. Yeah, it's just incredible. You can't walk through the forest and have a conversation like we're doing now because it's that loud sometimes. It's very difficult to walk upon the floor without stepping on them. So I would encourage everybody to go see these things, but this is markedly different from the everyday annual cicada that we have in our backyards, for sure. And so they're going to be coming out in such numbers, again, to try to overwhelm a lot of the predators that are out there. That's a good strategy. If you have the same amount of offspring every single year, then predators can, have populations that are adapted to that. On the other hand, if you surprise somebody, every so often make more offspring than anybody can be ready for, well, that's part of what their strategy is.
And you said the fact that it's prime numbers even exacerbates that positive emergence.
Yeah, so, the periodical cicadas are either 13-year cicadas or 17-year cicadas. The ones we have are emerging in their 13th year. The reason that's useful is because, for one, they've learned how to live longer than most other insects. And a lot of their predators are other insects, which means those other insects have shorter life cycles, and the cyclicity of those other insects is going to be like 2 years or 3 years or 4 years. You can't get to 13 that way. You can get to 12, and you can't get to 17 that way. I mean, you can eventually, but not as often, as long as you're using a prime number for your lifespan. So 13 and 17 are important numbers in the life of a periodical cicada.
There's some places where we can go and see not only this fascinating animal, but also a fascinating plant species too, I think. You said it's a good place to go and see both. Two things happening at once. It's pretty special. Yeah,
so the periodical cicadas are going to be available probably in some of your backyards, but also some of the land that we, as citizens of South Carolina enjoy, such as Lansford Canal State Park. And there you can see the periodical cicadas, but also the blooming of the Rocky Shoals spider lily. Those happen about the same time, early to mid-May. And then also Sumter National Forest is a great place. It's kind of, segregated a little bit. There's a plot of land just north of Columbia that's fantastic up towards Newberry, and another one just north of Aiken. So Sumter National Forest would be another great place to go see the cicadas if they're not.
Well, if I went like to Lansford Canal State Park, do I just wander around or listen for them, or what's the best way to actually see the numbers of them?
Yeah, good question. So they are a little different from our everyday cicada because they sing in the morning rather than the afternoon oftentimes. It's a droning sound. So it almost feel like maybe your hearing aid is going off or something like that. It's this odd sound that just does not sound like a cicada.
Oh!
Yeah, and so follow that. even though it sounds spooky, follow that. That will take you to the cicadas. And typically they're up in the deciduous forests. That's the best kind of place to
Because
find
that's
them.
where they had emerged.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's where the females are going to be laying eggs after she mates?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sure.
It's a lot to take in.
Well, it's just the complexity of something. We just think, oh, it's an insect, you
Right.
know, and we say, blah, 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 you know.
Right.
And then to think of all the combinations it has with other organisms. It's just, Austin is the most miraculous natural world.
It is, and it never stops to amaze you. And so that's why I'm so excited about this year. I was present for them in 2011. I'm hoping I'll be around to see these guys too. So
Yeah. Well, I will look forward to seeing people out there listening for the drone.
yes,
How about that?
yes, absolutely. Well, thanks for taking the time to get people excited about them.
Oh, I think they already are, but now they'll be even more so. Austin, thanks always for coming and
Absolutely.
sharing your excitement with us.
Absolutely.